In fact, I often wonder, this could be a topic for a brief discussion on any show, really. I always felt that, you know, that song, God Bless America, could very easily replace the Star Spangled Banner as the national anthem. Because, I mean, you are blessing America and pledging allegiance to America when you sing that song, you know. Um, but, you know, the Star Spangled Banner is tradition, you know, um, and I doubt if they're going to change it anytime soon.
Well, it is what it is.
I mean, especially when you know, plus, I mean, I hate to sound, put a snag into this or a racial overtone, religiously racial overtone, but Irving Berlin was a Jew, and he was showing his love for his adopted country when he wrote that song. And I still think even to this day they're still, you know, as much as I would like to believe, being the liberal that I am, as opposed to Felix, who's a bit more conservative, that, you know, the prejudice is not there anymore. But it is, you know, and I'm sure that somebody out there would say, oh, you know, Irving Berlin was Jewish. You know, why should we adopt that song? Well, we just keep the Star Spangled Banner, you know. So,
well, the Star Spangled Banner is a much older song, and it's what it is. You know, there's absolutely no reason to change it.
You know? Well, I think these songs, nobody had a problem with the song back then. We have a problem with it today because everybody's become subjective and liberal. Okay, but back then there were so many pilgrims in our country, and plenty of the pilgrims eventually had raised generations of family who were Christians. So we didn't have a problem saying "God Bless America" regardless who wrote it. It has a lot of meaning. Okay, number one, the song has overtone of freedom, salvation. This country represents God's grace. It really does.
Yes,
Look
it
at
does.
The freedoms we have here.
From the time
okay,
that
we got grace, we have mercy, we have freedom, we have speech. That is a biblical worldview.
But you know, Chad, if you go back, yes, that's how it started out. But you know, if you go back to the Pilgrims, and if you go back to Salem, Massachusetts, with the witch trials, okay, you say to yourself, how much freedom was there? You know, that just by an insinuation, you can put somebody to death because somebody said they were a witch.
Right.
You know.
Well, there were some villages, there were some cities even that were racially discriminative, just like when we had American slavery. Okay, that was a very very terrible time. But see, that's besides the point, and I say that's irrelevant in this sense. It's irrelevant in the sense that it doesn't prove or disprove what we ought to believe about God. We can say what people did believe. We can even talk about what they did. But when we start to say things like, this is what we ought to do, this is how we ought to behave. Was it good for the terrorists to throw planes into the World Trade Center towers? We say no. Of course not. That was a terrible thing to do. But the only reason we can say that is because there is a God that exists that transcends time, space, and matter and is outside of humanity. He is the only God. He's not multiple religion God. This is his own worldview, his own power, his own morality, and he sends that on us. Okay? So what we have here is a discussion about morality. Where does it come from? What's the ontological view? Why did men decide to fly planes into a tower and crumble them to the ground? Is the question we have to ask.
Well,
why did they do it?
For them, it was a.
And And is it right or wrong?
Well, for them it was a religious thing. Okay, they sacrificed. They made the ultimate sacrifice in the name of Allah and their religion, and they expected to be rewarded with 72 virgins. Okay.
Huh? Now, Mark, can I ask you a question, Mark?
What?
Mark, how do you know? How do you know that what they did was right or wrong? How do you know this?
Well, I mean, look. As far as I'm concerned, there's no right or right. It's definitely wrong.
You know, but you know what he's leading to.
But what you're saying, I know what you're saying is, according to them.
How do you know?
Well, according to them, their God, because you're talking about different gods, right? Their God says that there's absolutely nothing wrong with what they did because they were martyrs for a cause. And therefore they will be rewarded when they get into heaven. Okay?
Now, you hold that thought, Mark. I'm going to ask Felix this question. Felix, considering what Mark just said, he's basically saying that they said it was right, we said it was wrong. Now, if there is no objectiveness to that answer, meaning there was no black and white, meaning everybody's got their own opinions and their own responsibility to do what is right and wrong in their own sight, can we blame the Muslims for doing that?
Sure we can.
Can we?
But the problem is, we were blaming all Muslims. Okay, that's why they had so many.
No, hold on. That's not the question I asked. The question I asked was, can we blame them? The people who did horrible. I'm not talking about the people who didn't do terrible. They try to live in peace, and we recognize that. But there's something else we got to recognize. They belong into a religion and their own worldview that said killing innocent people in the World Trade Center was the right and healthy thing to do. How do we know that that's true? Can we condemn them for doing that?
Well, but you see, that's why I was saying that, you had imams come on news programs and and talk about Islam and the Muslim faith and saying that it's wrong, that they were wrong, okay, that it doesn't say that in the Quran, because they knew that many Westerners, many Americans were looking and saying, you see, it says that in their religion. They only did what their religion says. Kill the infidel. And to an extremist, we are the infidel. Okay, we do not follow the word of the Prophet. We do not believe in Allah. Okay? You follow Jesus.
So, Mark, are you saying that they got the religion wrong then? You're saying that Islam is really a religion of peace, but there's a group of people out there that ruin it for the rest of them.
I think that you have various religious leaders interpreting it the way they want to, like ISIS. ISIS interprets it one way, but I've heard imam after imam explain that the Quran is a book of peace and love, and they recognize Moses and Jesus and Abraham. They give props where props are due to be given. It's just that they feel that since they are the youngest religion and they are the last religion, that it was Muhammad who got the final word when he was called up to heaven by Allah, and then he came down and dictated the Quran. Okay, so their book is the holiest and the last book. That's what they believe. Okay, but I have yet to hear a religious leader, a Muslim religious leader, say that what was done on 9/11 was morally correct. I hear a lot of political rhetoric and, soldiers and terrorists say that it was the right thing to do.
There's plenty of leaders, Mark, though, saying that they want to destroy the infidels. But you don't have to hear it from a religious leader. You could just read it. I have given you guys a list of probably 17 different Quran verses that say to destroy the infidels, to treat them bad, and to lie to them if it furthers the agenda of Islamic agenda.
Yeah, but then you have imams.
That is what they're allowed to do.
Yeah, but then you have imams who will counter that by saying that's incorrect.
Heck, Mark, maybe they're both right. I mean, after all, you couldn't be able to tell that if all roads lead to God. Really, then what we're dealing with here is maybe they're both right. Maybe it's a contradiction, and the contradiction could be correct.
I don't know. That's like
good to kill infidels, and it's not good to kill infidels at the same time.
That's like going back to the argument that, when countries go to war, God is on our side. Whoever is victorious had God on their side. God can't be on everybody's side. Okay?
Or God may not be on anybody's side.
Although during World War II, during fascism and Nazism, they were very much anti-religion. Okay? So anybody who was religious would say, well, God was on the side of the Allies because we, Saturdays and Sundays, prayed to God. But I don't know. I like I said, I haven't seen an Islamic leader, religious leader, condone the acts of terrorism from 9/11. Okay, almost everyone to a one said that it was wrong. The killing of innocents like that. Now, don't forget, this is 14 years before ISIS and everything that's going on right now. Okay?
Right. But you know why they would consider it wrong, Mark? It's because a holy God, the true holy God, has said it is. It's not like they're coming up with a new revelation. See, this is what I want. This is why I repeat myself with you guys. I really want you to get this. It's not as if somebody's coming up with a new revelation and it's their own religion and it's their own subjective thoughts that say, oh, it's wrong to kill innocent people. Listen, Genesis chapter 1 says that we're made in the likeness, the image of God. And the things that God thinks of is exactly the reflection of who we are as a person. It goes against our conscience even when we do things that are wrong. Even these terrorists who flew the plane to the tower, they had a conscience. Now, they blocked that good conscience out of their mind. They rejected and they suppressed the truth and unrighteousness, right? Romans chapter 1.
It says,
but they still knew the truth. The truth is that these people did something wrong. But see, if you keep saying, well, I reject the idea that there's only one religion that's right, then we can't technically say that somebody is right and somebody's wrong because there's somebody out there, Mark and Felix, that disagrees with you. And you can't go, ultimately you can't say to somebody, well, you're wrong for saying that. It's a vicious circle you guys are in that you really need to get out of. Well, you can't recognize there's only one God that can give us the answers.
Well, but in the Old Testament, okay, and in the New Testament, and in the Quran recognizes the 10 Commandments as being holy and words to live by. It says, thou shalt not kill. Okay? And Jesus said, turn the other cheek. So, I mean, in all three Bibles, Old, New, and Quran, it says, thou shalt not kill. Yet, if there's one thing that human beings do very well, it's wage war against each other and kill each other.
Well, we might agree on some moral issues, and I'd say that it's a stretch. But the Quran is not the Bible. The Bible is not the Quran. They are two totally different presuppositions, two totally different beliefs two totally different dispensations. There's no way